It's been about a year and a half now since the last time I talked about ArcheAge 2. No, wait, ArcheAge Unchained. Oh, no, ArcheAge Chronicles. Yeah, that's ArcheAge Chronicles. It's been a while. Whatever the name, this is the follow-up to what was, for a time, an absolutely amazing MMO. In fact, I still firmly believe that had they not dropped the ball with terrible monetization, the original ArcheAge would be one of the top 10, if not even a top 5 MMO, still to this day. The core foundation of that game did so many things right. It was just an absolute treat during the pre-release beta period. But then launch happened and they introduced this aggressively pay-to-win cash shop selling labor points, supply crates, item regrading, rare resources like thunderstruck trees. The list goes on. It was a mess and frankly just killed the desire that I had to keep playing the game. But my disappointment mainly stemmed from the fact that I loved the actual game part itself. The world, the exploration, combat, its systems, the PvP, the crime mechanics, naval battles, farming, crafting, trade pack runs, over 200 class combinations. It was damn good, dude. Like, the first ArcheAge really was fantastic, minus its cash shop. I also didn't love the fact that the gear upgrade system could result in failing and breaking gear, but the rest of the game was fantastic, and they really just dropped the ball with how they monetized the game. Anyway, enter ArcheAge 2, or as it's been rebranded, ArcheAge Chronicles. Is there any hope that this game rekindles the magic of the original ArcheAge? Well, right off the top, I'm going to say probably not, for a few reasons. The main one being, from what we've been told, it's not really going to be all that much like the original ArcheAge. However, I do still think there is hope for them delivering a fun MMO light experience, and with the brief glimpses of the action combat that we saw recently, it does appear to be shaping up pretty good. We'll just have to hope everything else comes together. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. So yeah, the last time I covered ArcheAge Chronicles was all the way back in January 2025, and there really wasn't a whole lot known about the game at the time. We had a few brief descriptions on their website and Steam page, along with one developer vlog. From all of that, we gathered that the game would be opting for action combat over the original's tab targeting, with their stated goal being to deliver combat that rivals that of single-player action games. It is going to have a lot of the expected things with combo attacks, dashing, blocking, parrying. You can choose from melee, ranged, and magic options, in which we'll be combining weapon attacks with unique skills. We knew that the game was going to focus more on cooperative play than competitive, specifically prioritizing PvE encounters, including big groups of players. They would have PvP, but it's likely going to be on the smaller scale compared to the large guild battles, naval combat, and open world PvP from the original. And we were told to expect player housing, farming, and trading, although there will be a notable difference, like the housing is now instanced versus the open world they had in the past. They're promising to, in fact, to have player towns, but that was kind of vague at the time. Interestingly as well, there was no mention whatsoever of naval combat, which was a big and much loved feature of the original. And then finally, they were rebranding the game from ArcheAge 2 to ArcheAge Chronicles, mainly to help set expectations that it is not a direct sequel to ArcheAge, but rather a new kind of game set in the same universe. So that is pretty much everything we knew as of January 2025 when I made that last video. Since then, there's been quite a few updates. In fact, just earlier this month, they actually released a bit of real live gameplay. And you know what? I think it looks pretty solid, honestly. I mean, we got some nice animations in here. The sound effects are decent. The combat appears to have a decent sense of weight to it, with some hit stop and screen shake adding to that sense of impact. I don't know, man. I do like it overall. Probably most notably looking at this, though, is the total lack of any skill or ability icons on the user interface. Like, there's no icons anywhere. In the bottom left, we have what looks to be consumables, so like potions and throwing weapons. And then on the bottom right, that is most certainly a mount, a map, and it's a glider from what I can tell. But yeah, no like ability with cooldown indicators, which makes me wonder if they're gonna have those at all, or if they're just hidden for this gameplay showcase, who knows. Although I will say I'm happy to see once more what appears to be a glider. Absolutely adored how gliding worked in the open world of the original ArcheAge. In general, I don't love unrestricted flight in MMOs, but I think gliders are a nice medium. and I enjoyed it in ArcheAge, so happy to see it's going to be returning here in Chronicles. So yeah, this roughly 30-second chunk is like the first real glimpse of gameplay that we've seen. Now there have been some others in the past, but it's been like off-screen recordings where it's hard to get a good sense of things. This one clip here showcases what looks to be some form of group content where you got multiple players taking on this slightly larger enemy. And there was also some gameplay in that initial reveal trailer, but given how different it looks from the raw footage that we just saw, pretty clearly this wasn't actual live gameplay, but most likely just a target render, sort of what they were aiming for. So yeah, don't expect the game to look like this. Expect it to look more like what we just saw. So prior to this, the last big update on the game that we got came from this producer's letter. This was actually posted several months after my last video, and there's some noteworthy stuff in here. So in general, the letter was aimed at setting expectations in terms of what we should and shouldn't expect from the game. They did reiterate that this isn't just a sequel to ArcheAge. They even specifically say, it is not a traditional MMORPG. What we're making is a discovery-driven online action RPG. Think tighter combat, more focused pacing, and a world that's still shared and social but not built for massive Zerg fights or dozens of overlapping systems. They go on to highlight what they believe to be the game's strengths over the original, first and foremost pointing to combat. We built the combat system from scratch with combo-driven mechanics, dodges, and some really satisfying weapon-specific skills. It's punchy, it's responsive, and above all, it rewards smart play over simply spamming skill rotations. Although, is the implication there that you can't smartly do skill rotations and reacting to what's going on and whatever? They're trying to talk up their game, right? They also say that they have put a lot of love into exploration and storytelling. We're not going to be seeing glowing arrows dragging you to objectives. You're going to find things like forgotten temples, strange characters, ruins with secrets whispered by old gods, some things you'll stumble upon by accident, and that's kind of what they're hoping for. They want this to be an exploration-driven experience. In fact, in some later interviews that we will touch on, they specifically mention the likes of taking inspiration from Breath of the Wild, the Witcher series, and even Elden Ring for how they're crafting the world and how they want players to go about experiencing it, compared to like the traditional MMO blitzing through landscapes. Now, as for the game's MMO elements, because they will still be there, we can probably we could probably classify this as a shared world MMO light. They're saying it's not a full-blown MMORPG, but they do specifically say that the world is shared with others, but it's going to be more intimate, smaller group sizes, more meaningful cooperation, moments that feel personal, not chaotic or dominated by Zergs. And we'll get some more info about what to expect in terms of size. So the spoiler is, though, about dozens of players in one area at a time. And then lastly, in this post, they mentioned taking some of what worked in the original ArcheAge, but scrapping other things. They said we can expect life skills, housing, and crafting to return, just better, shared housing areas, decor that you can actually interact with, crafting that's tied into your character's growth, and the player economy in real ways. And then they wrap up this letter by saying that they are currently actively running small focus tests with small groups of players. It's under NDA, but they're going to be using that feedback to improve the game, of course, and that larger test will be coming at some point in 2026, and hopefully sometime soon, because the game is still supposed to actually be releasing before the end of this year. All right. So following that producer's letter, there were a couple of interviews with the developer that shared some additional interesting information. So first off, we have this interview from Massively OP. Now, they kicked things off by asking once more, what type of genre do the devs consider this game, and what specifically does that mean? They said, we want to make sure that players understand that ArcheAge Chronicles is not a traditional MMORPG. Instead, this is an exploration-driven action RPG that will have online elements such as trading, housing, crafting, and so on. The focus of Chronicles is more on the narrative and the solo and small group content, with optional multiplayer content. Think of it as being like a hybrid of Breath of the Wild and ArcheAge. Somewhere in between those two is what ArcheAge Chronicles is. And then they specifically said, as for number of players, we're still nailing down the final numbers, but depending on the zone and activity, you can expect to encounter dozens of other players at a time. Now, when asked further about the game's inspirations, they replied that it's a mix of single player and MMO, with games like Breath of the Wild, Witcher 3, and Elden Ring shaping how they think about open world exploration, environmental storytelling, and meaningful progression through solo play. but the game still builds off of the DNA of the original ArcheAge, drawing heavily from its systems-driven design, including housing, trade routes, life skills, and that player economy, just reimagined in ways that support solo play and social play. And with all of that, they also want to then take the best of MMOs with these persistent online worlds and players running around, creating this living online game that's also not a time sink. They made sure to call out that. They also did touch on the housing system, and apparently what we're going to get here is closest to something like how Lord of the Rings Online or World of Warcraft does the neighborhood system, compared to like the full open world, open zone housing of the original ArcheAge. They said housing zones exist in the world, and within each zone there are going to be multiple channels, not unlike parallel versions of the same village or district. Once you claim a home in a channel, that becomes your version of that space and persist for you and your neighbors. So you're still going to have these like living social zones. You're going to see other people, you can trade with them, hang out at their house, but without the scarcity and pressure of the land grab that happens with the fully unrestricted open world stuff, which I remember fresh servers trying to find yourself a plot of land and fighting the bots off in the process. I mean, it's cool in a sense, but at the same time, it definitely has its drawbacks, right? Oh, and also in this interview, they got asked about PvP, and they said here that it's going to be smaller scale with less of a focus that it had in the original game. So we definitely should not expect the massive faction wars or the open world ganking. That is not going to be in Chronicles. Now, there will still be competitive player versus player gameplay, but they said it's going to be structured and opt-in only. So likely what we're talking about here is battlegrounds, like with like maybe 10v10, 15 versus 15, competing over objectives, and or arenas, 2v2, 3v3, whatever, where you've got like these small scale skirmishes you can queue up for and fight other people. So competitive PvP will be still happening, but that huge open world gank fest, as they say, which I'll admit, I was a part of it. I did play a stealth character. I think I played the Shadow Archer, Dark Runner. I played Dark Runner when I had stealth, I'm pretty sure, in the Oromancy tree. It's been many years, but dude, yeah, dude, there was some open world ganking. That was part of the charm, but I get it. They're going to keep it structured PvP, whatever. So there was also another interview with Mine MMO, and we had a few good bits in here as well. They got asked about those MMO-like features, and once more they discussed, yes, we're still going to have open world with zones where you see other players. It just won't be hundreds of players. It'll be dozens of players. And then on top of that, there will be dungeons. These will be built for smaller groups, like 2 to 5 players roughly. And there are going to be things like social hubs. You'll have public events and shared spaces like marketplaces and those housing zones. And we actually also got some good info on character progression classes. So rather than locking players into rigid classes, they said that they're building this flexible system where you choose your abilities, gear, weapons, and playstyles, experimenting with different weapon types, building synergies with skills, and then getting gear that enhances whatever your preferred approach is, and whether that's going to be melee, magic, support, or some mix in between. As for gear acquisition, we'll be getting it through questings, dungeon, crafting, and trading, and they do also note that the game is going to utilize that holy trinity, so you will have tanks, healers, and damage dealers. Those just won't be determined by picking a class. It'll, again, be the gear, the weapons, and the skills that you're using. I'm curious where the skills come from. Are the skills just from the weapons? Is there a separate system? Is like the weapon skills and then also another skill system that's not just classes and then also the gear? I'm still a little hazy as to that. Okay, so those are the two big interviews, the big developer blog and everything else that we've known about the game. Not too long ago, they opened up their Discord page and a Discord channel, and there was an FAQ there, but it was just really basic stuff like, how do I report someone spamming our Discord channel? And are we gonna get to play the game ever? Stuff like, but they did specifically clarify, which I hadn't remembered this, that the game, it's gonna be PC and console. It's coming to PC, Xbox, and PlayStation right out the gate, which it's gonna be happening soon, because as for the game's release, according to the publisher, Cacao Games, they are still targeting a fourth quarter 2026 launch for ArcheAge Chronicles. This got revealed during a quarterly investor call just a few months ago. It was like 4 months ago. So as of 4 months ago, they are still planning to launch this year, which is very soon. I don't know. That's very soon, and it's still not set in stone, or at least not publicly. Now, I'll wrap this whole thing up by saying I'm definitely not expecting them to rekindle the magic of the first ArcheAge. That dream has come and gone. And I'm not even necessarily expecting them to follow exactly in the footsteps of what I loved about the original ArcheAge, but I am at least hopeful that they can deliver a fun MMO light with cool action combat, engaging systems, and an interesting world to explore. That is my hope, like my most hopeful, wishful thinking hat on. Best of the best case scenario. You know, I'm not expecting, again, that magic of ArcheAge to be returned in action combat form. They've pretty explicitly said that they're taking a divergent path from what that original game was. Hopefully they also diverge from the original game's monetization setup as well. But either way, I'm going to continue to keep a close eye on the game, however it turns out. I will be sure to keep you all posted once this becomes playable. We get a chance to check it out. Apparently there should be some beta testing prior to release, and release is supposed to be happening at some point within the next 5 months. Believe it or not. Probably not, right? I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But that's all for today. Little update on ArcheAge Chronicles. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Take it easy.